You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
All right. So excited to be here today. We're doing an episode with the one and only Mr. Daniel Fernandez, who is gracious enough to be here since Dr. Sherry is off doing amazing, adventurous things with her family. We are excited to talk about the biggest challenge for coaches, which is the business, which is the pain of coaching, or the pain side of coaches or coaching. Most coaches love coaching. They don't have a problem with coaching. When it comes to the business side of things, when it comes to actually reaching out to potential clients, prospecting, when it comes to having a marketing plan or actually executing on a marketing plan, when it comes to selling, that's where things go wrong for a lot of coaches. And we wanted to talk about that today a little bit, have a candid conversation, because Daniel and I have been on this journey for I think Daniel has been on the journey for 10 plus years at this point. Has it, Daniel?
Yeah, depending how you measure it, depending on where business comes in.
Well, that's a good point. If I counted it like that, for me, it would be more like not 7 years, but more like 5 years when the actual business started picking up.
Exactly.
So maybe we'll make it a real conversation. We'll talk about some of the challenges and how we have worked through that in the past, how we've been able to sustain businesses for 7 to 10 plus years, and how you can utilize that to start to begin to build your business or start to grow your business, start to scale your business wherever you are on that spectrum. So Daniel has been on the podcast before. We've had a couple other episodes you can watch. He's shared his story a little bit on one of the podcasts, and he's been on our podcast about group coaching, which he does. He runs Group Coach Magic with Rob. I love that episode. We talk quite a bit about group coaching. So definitely watch or listen to those episodes depending on where you're hearing this. So Daniel, why don't we get started with the pain of business? Where did the pain start with you, and where is it at now?
Yeah, well, what we were saying before was that business is the pain of coaching, and there's a lot of pains of business for sure.
Yeah. I
always talk about the fundamental cool thing, and also the fundamental problem of business is people, but there's a lot more to business than just the people. And you said sustain a coaching business for 7 to 10 plus years. This is an interesting word, sustain, because you can sustain a very low profit or no profit business. So if that counts, then you can add a couple of years on that.
I would say even that is challenging. That is challenging to not give up and sustain.
Sustaining could mean a lot of things, right? So
let's do it. Sustaining it and ideally making it profitable. And what we care about with our clients is that to make it profitable, make it something that you can create the lifestyle that you want. You can build on that and support people, serve people, and impact people in the way that you really matters to you, which includes your family and life, not just other people.
Yeah, well, I think we should go back to the real reason why this conversation is really important, which is, like you said it first, which is coaches love coaching. We, as coaches, we want to help people. I say turn light bulbs on. Some other people say change their lives or make a change or achieve their goals, whatever it is. Coaches love that impact, that feeling of seeing somebody make a move forward, like actually chase their goals and dreams. We as coaches also want to be doing that. That's why we also need coaches. But it's something we love to see. This is what drew us to the profession. And if it's not something you're loving as a coach, you should think about what do you love about coaching? Because coaches love the coaching process, and not all coaches know about or love the business process. And I want to add the word yet, because what I want coaches to think about is, if you want to continue to pursue the thing you love, which is coaching, you got to think about what do I need to put in place to make sure that I continue to enjoy that thing you love. And maybe some of the coaches listening here are independently wealthy and don't have a financial constraint. Maybe the coaches here are following another career path separately and don't have a career plan for coaching. But most of the coaches listening, I would assume, are people who both have coaching as a career plan and B, need to know how to make the money so that they can also have the lifestyle that they want. That's one of the promises that we hear about coaching is like, oh, live the lifestyle you want, be an entrepreneur, and have a business around your coaching. And that sounds great in theory, but nobody understands what business actually means. Like all of a sudden, once you start trying to do this, like all these things start coming up and all these questions and problems and taxes and accounting and wait, websites and wait, social media. Do we need that?
Why are you freaking me out, Daniel? I didn't need to think about that shit.
And sales, like how are you going to do coaching if nobody ever signs up for your program? Or you could just do it for free, but how is that going to make you any money? So like there's so many pieces of the puzzle that like when I first started coaching, I didn't even know that I needed to care about a lot of these things. I mean, I knew a little bit. There was like I had to probably create an entity, and I probably had to, put money in that entity somehow. Maybe I had to pay for some expenses, but I wasn't going to have any expenses because I was coach. I'm just going to talk to people, right? There's no expenses with that. What? So it's interesting. Like you can have a very low expense business. We can talk about that today, but business is a really important thing to consider. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, business, I never thought about that. We're going to talk today about all the things that we learned about the business part of the coaching world. It's going to be different probably for you and me, Faisal. We have different paths and journeys too, but I think it's going to be really fun to talk about because I haven't reflected on this.
It will be. And maybe just to make it more real, let's talk about maybe we can start talking about the challenges that we go through as coaches, and we've kind of highlighted it, but what are the challenges that each of us faced as we were starting out? And then we'll a little bit go into our story, but now I want you all, because some of you might be starting out and you're going through those challenges. Some of you are in the middle of it, and maybe you're making some money in the process. Maybe you have a part-time job. I've had that on the side for a while. Maybe you're trying to sustain that, and you're concerned about whether or not you can sustain this, you can make it profitable. I think that might be helpful. And then we can talk about, well, what are some of the things that you can do to start working on the business, start making it a little bit more sustainable and profitable as you move forward. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, great. And I think it would be fun for us to just have a conversation about each of our stories too, get to know each other even more. Like I know we've known a little bit, but like you and me to talk about that could be really fun for us too. So
yeah. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
All right.
I'll hear let's tell the initial part, of the coaching story.
So first of all, I mean, I didn't know what coaching was when I got into it. Like I just attended one of Brendan Burchard's Experts Academy, and I go there and he offered certified high performance coaching. That was 2014, I think. No, 2015. 2015, and then the same year I went and got certified as a high performance coach. Now, the whole process was very exciting because I'm like, oh my God, this new world. I've been doing this thing, but I didn't know what it was called. This thing called coaching, and now I can do this. And I got really excited at the certification. And then I went home like, okay, all right, I can do this. I'm sitting behind my computer. I can build this business. And Brendan said, it's simple enough. It's easy enough. You can do this. Okay, so what do I need to do? I need to put up my application somewhere for coaching. Like, okay, I need to build a website. Okay, I have this Kajabi thing. I can work through it. So it took me I'm sitting there, and I thought I was doing very effective work. I spent about 2-3 weeks trying to figure out Kajabi. And I'm trying to figure out all this stuff. How can I did end up putting up my website. It was just a whatever non-functional website or whatever I could figure out from Kajabi. There were a lot of pieces of it, and I couldn't figure out much of it, but at least I set up something where I had a link to a questionnaire that people could go to and all that. So I'm like, okay, what's the next step? The next step is I need to put out content. That's what Brendan taught me. Put out content. I'm like, okay, that took me another 2-3 weeks to do because I was scared to do the content. So I was like, I need to come up with a plan. I need to do this. Finally, I got the courage to make one video. Remember that was one I believe video. Took me about 4 hours to talk to Sada, my wife, about it. And by the time I finished that, told the story, it took her another 3-4 hours to edit that thing because I had to make it sentence by sentence. I couldn't talk in front of a camera.
And look at you now.
now I'm talking.
You're podcasting live.
And I'm doing it live. And this is just the most surreal experience because I was so scared to even speak in front of the camera. So I put out content. Now I'm like, okay, all right, people are going to come to me because I'm putting up content. And now I'm starting to put up these code cards. I'm putting up some videos. I even did a 30-day challenge. Like I did a video every day for 30 days. I even engaged people on, and I did it twice. I did it once on Facebook, then another time on YouTube. And yes, I'm going to get clients. I got some inquiries like, what do you do? This and that. Maybe I got one strategy session out of the whole 30-day, but not much. And then I did it on YouTube again. Like the content is still there. It's still sitting there, right? For anybody that wants to look at it. If they want to laugh a little bit, they can go there because it wasn't that great. Well, some of it was good. Some of it was like I was just learning how to speak on camera. So none of that really helped me build a business. I was like, okay, well, clients should be coming anytime soon. 1 month goes by, second month goes by, third month. I'm like, okay, now I need to think about getting a job because this is not working out. Getting a job because this is not working out. And so at the time I had been laid off from my work. So I had about a 4-month buffer. So I was doing a lot of discovery in the process. I was learning I was doing all this stuff. I was trying to I need to get this up and running, but I wasn't when I look at it in retrospect, I wasn't doing the thing that would move the business forward. I was doing, yes, it was good for me to put out content. It was good for me to put myself out there, but I wasn't doing the actual thing. And I'll talk about what that was in a bit.
Can I comment? Because this is a fascinating, so I want to say, first of all, you did a lot more useful things than I did. And you're saying those things weren't actually useful. I want to share a little bit what I did too, but in a minute. But what you did in 4 months, that's a lot of action taking. So I just want to say that's really great. I wish I was taking that much action at the beginning. But you mentioned this thing about you had 4 months, and that's the concept that I call runway. How much financial runway do you have? And we often talk about in the startup world, entrepreneurship, you talk about how much runway do you have? How long do you have before you're going to go bankrupt? Or before you run out of money. So there's this financial runway whole thing that, coaches need to think about for sure. But the other part of this is emotional runway. It's I coined the term emotional runway because I'm it's not just about the financial runway, because I had a little bit more runway, but I was struggling emotionally with the process.
Oh, I love that.
And so eventually years later, I realized, I didn't have enough emotional runway to make it through the next stages. And what you're talking about is really, really important, which is, and it kind of mixes in with it, which is you were doing a lot of things, but you weren't sure which ones were going to move the needle for you, which made it really hard emotionally for you, I'm sure, to not get the results constantly. And, as an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur, you learn that you need to have a very, very strong emotional constitution and be able to withstand the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, and have that emotional runway.
I love that you're bringing up, and that's like mic drop. If I could drop my mic, I would do this. That's how I'll do this. I won't break my mic. I love that because I can go back to that. Actually, if I were to kind of compare the two, even if I got I ended up doing Uber for a while. When I went, I didn't have a problem with doing Uber. I could have, the harder part was I didn't want to go back to my engineering stuff because I knew that if I went there, it would pull me in. It was a lot of mental work. I would kind of get drained and I wouldn't focus so much. So I'm like, okay, I'll go do Uber. That wasn't a problem for me. I didn't have a problem with doing a job. I was providing for my family. That's not a negative thing for me. And I actually enjoy driving, so I didn't mind. And it also connected some of my values. I wasn't working on somebody else's schedule. I was doing my own thing. So it kind of felt more entrepreneurial for me that I could just do. And on top of that, I would listen to a lot of books on Audible. And so I was listening to a lot of books at that time when I was doing. So
do you ever have coaching conversations with your Uber passengers?
Oh, all the time. I was a full-time coach in Uber. They just didn't know I was a coach.
And you're getting paid. Look at this. You're getting paid to coach constantly in little snippets, depending on the length. It's variable length coaching via Uber. You're getting paid. You're a paid coach.
I have no idea how many conversations that I would end with, and it was so painful for me. I would literally do a full-blown coaching conversation without asking, which was another thing I didn't do. And by the end of a ride, it would be a longer ride, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes an hour ride. they would get there. They're like, "Whoa, this was so incredible!" And I'm like, "This person's gonna ask me to coach them." Yes.
Oh,
That's what happened.
you didn't say, would you like to continue?
No, I didn't, because in my head I'm assuming this stuff.
Lesson
So
number one,
I
for
didn't even
coaches
ask
listening,
to.
always have a call to action if you want to get a client.
But on top of that, I didn't ask permission, so they didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Oh yeah, that too.
Because they thought it was just a normal conversation.
That's
But they're
amazing.
like blown away, and I'm like, yes, I would enjoy it. But it wasn't just that. I would just listen to conversation a lot of times when people would come in. Even when I would just listen, I would just notice what people are talking about, what matters to them about their family, and people will talk about a lot of stuff. It would be the most interesting thing if I'm not listening to books or lectures or videos. I am listening to people or talking to people. That was incredible. So that was a good thing. But the reason I brought it up is that I was running out of emotional. My emotional bandwidth was running out faster than financial. Like financial, like logically, I could do a lot of stuff. Like if I didn't do Uber, I would do a job. If I didn't do that, I would do something else. Like I could sustain our life. That wasn't a problem. The problem was that I didn't know what was going to work and what was not. I didn't have clarity. And the things that I was doing, I was like, I would do something and then nothing will come out of it. Or some small thing when, and I didn't have a frame of reference to know what was working and what was not working. And it was like a constant, like you said, that up and down, but I wasn't used to that up and down in the sense when you come from the world of jobs, you don't go through that kind of variability that much to that extent.
I want to talk about that because that's a really, really important thing. The up and downs, as I was talking about, I call it the entrepreneurial emotional roller coaster. Yeah. And what it is it's both existential. It's like, am I doing the right thing? Oh, I should just quit. Or am I, in the right path and I should follow my dreams? Oh, well, I'm not making any money, so I'm gonna like be under the bridge in a van by the river. Or, oh no, I just had a successful, conversation. This could work. And then it's like, oh my God, I can't feed my family, or I'm useless. And then it's like, oh, but I could do something like this. And then something clicked, and it's just constant, like, and you don't have that in corporate because in corporate, well, most of the time you don't have, because in corporate, the business is already running. Yeah. You already have like some income that is coming in, so you can release the existential need to produce that income. I mean, even if you're in sales, there's a process you're following. It's already working. So
you have quotas, you have a process. You need to make sure you hit that. All you're doing is just making sure you pick up the phone and call a bunch of people.
Yeah. So that is, arguably easier than the entrepreneurial roller coaster. And this is probably one of the reasons why entrepreneurship may not be, as easy as people think it's going to be, because what we don't think about is the emotional roller coaster. The glamour of entrepreneurship is like part of our culture. Like you go on Shark Tank, you're like, oh, that person built a business and then went to the sharks and got a deal. But you don't see the years of emotional roller coaster that's been happening, and how they almost put their family in be homeless, that they double mortgaged their house, and what that felt like. They struggled to put food on the table. They moved in with their parents. Like there's lots of things that could have happened behind the scenes that you only see the glamour, and nobody talks about the 20 years it takes to become the glamorous overnight success.
Yeah, and I did all those things. Like, and I was fortunate and blessed to have like a life partner who supported me, and I know Kate supported you too. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, if it was any other person, they would have been like, what the hell are you doing? This is not working out. Give up. Because there was a point we moved in with my sister-in-law. We were there for 2 years. I mean, it helped them too, but it was a really cool experience in retrospect, but it was stressful to be in that situation.
Oh my gosh.
With our daughter, who's just like 1 year old or a year and a half old at that time, and having no certainty over what's going to happen with the business, and just going day in, day out, trying to figure this out. And there were points where like, okay, where do I put my time in? Even though I was doing Uber, I could put more time in to make money, but then I was not doing the thing that I needed to move it. And I didn't have any certainty around that. It was like constant barrage of, like you said, this even, and the thing is, here's the thing, coaches are probably, ideally they should be in a better position to deal with their emotions in a better way, but when you're going through that, you're not. especially if you don't have the support, especially if you don't have the right peers, especially you don't have a coach. And I didn't have any of that stuff. I was alone behind my computer.
You say coaches should be able to deal with their emotions better. In general, in typical situations, that makes sense, right? In a situation where you're dealing with a family member, that coaches have done some of the work, that they know how to deal with those conversations. And maybe some coaches, have done the work in some places, but not in others, right? So when we're talking about entrepreneurship, that's usually a new world for a coach. We're talking about business, it's usually a new world. And so the thing about coaches is like, we're just like everybody else in that we have some areas where we're emotionally strong, some contexts, and some areas where we're not, and we have growth opportunities. And the one thing about entrepreneurship, which I love, and one of the reasons I was attracted to it, is I knew that at some level, I knew that I would have to grow as a person to become an entrepreneur. And what I didn't know was what that actually meant. And if I had known that, I probably would have been like, yeah, maybe not going to do that. But that's true of every goal in my life that I didn't know I was going to do. Everything I've achieved came from things like, oh, I didn't know that was what that meant. And I put myself in it and achieved something that if I look back and said, oh, that's going to be that much work, or that's going to be that hard, I might not have done it. But entrepreneurship was like that in some ways. And for coaches, that's a growth opportunity for you. And when you grow as an entrepreneur, you're growing as a human, and therefore you're going to be a better coach. And that's one of the most important things about coaching, is to always be challenging yourself to grow, to put yourself in hard situations, to try things that you don't know that you can definitely, know the path on. And so being able to deal with that uncertainty helps you deal with the uncertainty of life. Being able to deal with the business relationships helps you deal with the personal relationships. So everything you learn in business is helping you become a better human and coach ultimately.
Yeah. And this is all under the assumption, and our assumption is that you want to create that entrepreneurial life, whether that's
right.
full-time or part-time in the beginning stages. That's fine. There might be other coaches listening to this. They might not have that path. Maybe they're in the corporate world. They're leveraging this as a skill set. That's fine. You can use this. You can look at it. Maybe you're thinking about some point in the future you can do this, so you can listen to this. But for those who are doing this part-time and going into full-time, or wanting to do this full-time, it needs to be an internal decision, because there's going to be challenges pretty much. And then there's, I love this quote, is like, everything is hard. Pick your hard. What an entrepreneurial path is hard. The corporate world is not easy. It has its own challenges. The job world is not easy. You deal with the effects of working too much, not being in the right culture. You have no control over that stuff. And for me, it was like, I didn't like the culture. I didn't like the values. I didn't like the culture. I didn't like the way they dealt with each other. And I just didn't feel aligned with that path. Then I started asking myself, like, well, what matters to me long term? And this is really important, like long term, because what we're talking about is not a short term thing. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. If you're going to do this, then there are some internal decisions that need to happen. For me, it happened actually out of a criticism in my family, where someone close to me told me, like, you've been working at this for this many years and you haven't made a dime. You've left your engineering job. You're doing all this stuff. Nobody knows what the hell you're doing, and you've kind of stopped connecting with us. This and that, and just like it kind of shocked me emotionally, but it also helped me kind of step back and say, like, what am I doing? Why does this matter to me? Like, I'm making my life harder and harder. Why does this matter to me? And what came to me is like, I actually don't care if this picks up in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. I'm doing this. I'm okay with the challenges. And as soon as I made that decision, for some reason, there was another level of emotional resiliency that kicked in.
Love that. Can I ask as well, when you made that decision, if you're doing it for 15 years, doesn't some part of reality kind of come in and say, like, okay, if I'm going to do this for 15 years, which I'm committed to, what does that mean for my family? And what does that mean for, like, being able to support my family with income? Like, did that have, like, that's a real variable. It's not just an imaginary one, right?
So it's not, and that's why, and this is where that's why I work a lot with my clients when we're doing the vision building session. And originally I started going into vision for that reason, because I really had to ask myself a lot of questions long term. So it wasn't just a question of, oh, I'm building this business in 5 years, 10 years. That was one question. now I have a whole family. Like the reality is that I have a daughter, I have my wife, and yeah, she's very supportive, but I need to put myself in her situation. What is she dealing with? She's constantly dealing with the fact that we can't do the things that we want to do. We have financial challenges. We're in debt a lot of times. How is she dealing with that emotion? How's that affecting her? How is that affecting our interaction? Like we both have big families. How is that affecting our interaction with the rest? There's a lot in there. So it helped me like, okay, if I'm going to build a vision, I need to pull her into that vision. Like it can't be my vision. And so we had to kind of work through that. We went through a few challenging parts of our life and our relationship where we didn't know what we were doing. She was just hoping that this would work out just like I was hoping. But then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this because this matters to me and my soul and who I am. I'm going to create this. But one promise I'll make is that I will never sacrifice us because of this. And I needed to communicate that. And when she was able to receive that, she knew that, okay, I can trust him to not do that. So when I'm saying that, okay, it would take 10 years, I'm still doing other things. If that took me working 50 hours of Uber per week, I'll do it. And I did. For 2-3 years, I did quite a bit of that, and I still continue on. I'm going to figure this out. But it didn't mean sacrificing that side of my life. And that required us to build a common vision that this is going to pick up. We're going to work through this together and move through that. And it was interesting that happened. We worked through that. We moved through that. At some point, I let go of the whole Uber stuff. Interestingly, I actually missed doing Uber because I got so busy.
You still can do it when you want to.
It's just not worth my time.
Well, if you miss it and it brings you joy, you could do one every now and then, right?
I can drive my car.
It's like playing a musical instrument. If you really love playing an instrument, it might not be worth the time because you're not making any money at it, but you do it because you love it, right?
So the main reason why I left it, because it was funny, I still remember there was this one weekend, because usually weekends I would do Uber. The only day, like Sunday, I would finish a little bit early. But I remember I was sitting with Sara. He's like, "Aren't you doing Uber?" And it was one of those things just happened. I just looked at Sara and I was like, "I think we'll be fine." I actually enjoyed just being with the family, and I didn't need to do it just because some things were working in the background.
Something more important, right?
Something, and that was more valuable at the time. And then as business started picking up, I got more and more focused on that.
Yeah,
it just transitioned out in itself. But I think the important thing that I'm sharing here is that it can't, if you're a family, it can't just be your thing. And I love that you brought it. It can't just be your vision. You need to pull whoever is supporting you in that vision. Mm-hmm. And if you're not clear, you cannot communicate that, and you cannot understand their vision either.
That's awesome. I loved hearing some more of your story. There are some things I didn't know.
No, I want to know from your side, like what are some of the things that you went through in the beginning?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I'll share how I got into coaching. It's truly accidental. And I didn't know coaching was a thing. I didn't know what it was. But I was in corporate. I was working at General Motors. I had a great job at GM. And I was an engineer also, just like you, Faisal. But I was building some really great tools for the company and doing.
You were on the software end, right?
It was manufacturing line and IT integration work. Okay. So it's helping those two systems communicate and share information so that we could use it. Okay. I was doing it on a bunch of projects, and they decided after 5 years of me doing this and building some systems out for the company and building a team up to do this kind of work, because it was really valuable work. They said, "Oh, we want you to come on and be a manager for one of our plants. We want you to manage all of our IT infrastructure for a manufacturing plant." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds cool." Like I had no direction in my career. I was just like, whatever happens, I would just go in that direction. I never really, thought about where my career was heading. I never thought about what I wanted in life really, or in my career. I didn't have any sense of vision. So I wish I had like vision sessions to go to back then. But this
is actually a point to those who think like they're watching some people who are successful, and the coaches might assume that they know what they're doing. Most people don't.
No, I had no clue. I had no clue. This is a journey you're on. I still, sometimes I still don't know. But so I took the job, and I spent, this is a job where I was in charge of a team of people, and I had never been officially, in charge of a team of people. I didn't know how to do that. I just thought my job was engineering. I was like working on systems and things, and I was very, very good at systems and things. But I spent 2 years just like abjectly failing at my job. Like I did not know what to do. I mean, I was working a lot. I was working hard. I had some accomplishments and some things, but they weren't really the role that I was meant to play in that company. I needed to be connecting people. I needed to be solving problems. I needed to be strategically thinking. And I wasn't doing any of that. I was just like thinking about systems all day. But I was working really hard because I felt the pressure of that. And I felt like all these requests and things that I didn't know how to accomplish. I didn't know how to leverage a team. And so I just kept on failing. I'm working longer and longer hours. And I was working like sometimes 18-hour days. And, I thought I was doing a great job. But one day, one of the executives pulled me aside and called me to his office and slammed the door behind me. And I was like, oh, this is not good. And I'm like, something's about to happen. He's like, Daniel, you are failing at your job. It's not my boss. My boss was in another building. And I hadn't really communicated with him very much. But this executive pulled me aside and slammed the door. And I was like, what is happening right now? And he's like, you're failing. I'm like, oh, I've been working really hard. I've been working on this and that and the other. I was here last night till like midnight. He's like, no, you're not hearing me. You're failing. He had to like repeat it like 5 times before I was like, what do you mean? Before I like noticed what he was saying, instead of being defensive, he told me, like you don't know what to do in this job. You're failing your team. You're failing us in the manufacturing plant. And you could be doing, I can tell your heart is in the right place. I know you're trying really hard. I know you want to do a good job. I know you want to help the people around you, but you don't know how to do it. And so what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to mentor you. And by the way, at this point, I didn't like this guy. So I thought he was really direct and wasn't my style, just in general. But thank God he was being direct here because I needed to be told. Someone needed to tell me like 2 years, I was just like complete failure. What? I didn't know. So after that meeting, I was like, man, I was reeling. But a couple of days later, I was like, oh my God, this is the first person in 2 years who's told me anything that in any way that they really care about me. And so I decided, maybe it was not less than a couple of days. It was like maybe the next day. I decided like I was going to make him proud. And so, and then I was like, what did he do to me? What was that? It was like a form of coaching in a way. He was very direct and he challenged me. He challenged me to think differently and to step up and do something differently and to get help is what I needed. So he's pushing me in the direction that he knew that I wanted to go in. So in some form, it was coaching. And I'm like, that's so interesting. So after a little while, I realized like the coaching is the thing. So he mentored me and I started improving. And, the next year I went from having a like completely worst negative performance review to have a complete outstanding performance review from my boss, who was like, what happened? He didn't know. Right. So it was amazing experience. And what I learned through the process was like, you can do that to people. You can help them, move them along. And that's one way is to like call them out and challenge them. And then I learned, there's this thing called coaching. And then I was like, I found out about coaching certifications and I went and got one and I started going to business school just because I knew that, I wanted to build something and I wanted to also do coaching. And then eventually over several years in this company after that, I still was mentored. And eventually I was like thought partnering with this mentor and we were actually solving bigger and bigger problems for General Motors. And by the end of my time there, I had been promoted a few times and I had a company car and had a great salary. And I was like, had a really high performance team to make a long story short. And I was ready to quit my job. And at the same time, I didn't know what was waiting for me on the other side. So I quit my job. And at this point, my girlfriend at the time was in Chicago. So I had to move to Chicago. And she was just supporting me through this period of time. So I quit my job to become an entrepreneur, to start coaching. And I was there in Chicago I had no friends that I knew. I had no job. I lost my company car, all the benefits that I had, all my identity as a coach was like wrapped up in my previous life, right? As all my identity as a person was wrapped up in my previous life. And I was starting this new thing called coaching. And of course I had practiced at work. I coached colleagues. I'd never been paid.
How did you find out that coaching was a thing for you to go towards?
Well, after I had that conversation with him, I found out that coaching was a thing on the internet, and I learnned about Brendan Burchard. That's where you and I met, is through coaching certification. And I got certified in 2013. And then I spent a couple years doing nothing with it because I still had a job and I wasn't like totally shifted in my identity. And I was just trying things with colleagues and so on. And then eventually when I quit my job in 2017, I still did not have a business. I still wasn't really coaching. And I hadn't made any money doing it because I hadn't asked for anybody to join my programs. I didn't have like a sale. I was just practicing really. And then I quit and moved in with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. And I spent that entire year in Chicago, like trying to build a coaching business. I was doing all the things I was supposed to do, but wasn't working. And I didn't know the right things to do. I didn't know what I wanted in my coaching business. I didn't understand how to build that. And so I was doing things like working on Kajabi and website type stuff. And like, I literally did not need to do that. It was so hard for me because I was really hitting those emotional challenges every day. It was like, oh my gosh, okay, so I'm being supported by somebody else. Like I'm not earning my own way anymore. I'm just kind of like, I'm sucking the life out of my wife's money. You know, it's like I'm living off somebody else. It didn't feel good. And that was another emotional barrier for me. And I spent a long time just trying really hard again, actually, and not really, and fail. I spent the first year failing, to be honest. And I think it's because I wasn't ready to emotionally handle what was going on in my personal life. Like I was not, I lost all my identity. I was in a new town, no friends, no social life, no communities, no social activities that I had, no work, which is a big identity. Didn't have the thing I could be proud of. Right? I was really proud. I had a great job at GM. I had a company car. I was like, I was something, relatively, above average. And now I was basically failing at being nothing anyway. So it was a really hard transition. And if I was to go back, what I would say to anybody, if you can keep your job while you make money coaching, that might be an easier transition. Because then you, at least when you make the transition, you already have something up and going. And the nice thing too is I learned a lot of coaching skills in my job. I had a really great playground. So if you can do coaching at your job, you're getting paid to coach. Just so you know, and that's a really positive thing. You're a paid coach, which I think sometimes we as coaches we tend to say like, oh, entrepreneurship is the only way you can do coaching. But I think it's really, really important and valuable to be able to coach in a job. And so if you have that opportunity, by all means, do it. And CMC can be a great support for you there too. But don't think entrepreneurship is the only way to coach. One of the best ways to get experience, and this is something that happened to me in my career, is working for somebody else as a coach.
Yeah.
That, especially at the beginning, that is like an amazing opportunity to grow your skills, to get paid to do it, and to really up your game. Because now you got to perform for somebody else. It's not just yourself, because sometimes when you're performing for yourself, you don't have as much necessity. And so especially early in the game, it's really powerful to get some work working for somebody else. If you can do that part-time, great. So you can build your business if that's what you want. If you don't, full-time, whatever. But being a paid coach is what you really want most of the time. So I wish I would have done that.
Yeah, you're bringing up a really cool, important point. And I had a very similar realization. And so I started getting some clients and I was making some money from coaching because I was doing some of the stuff online. And I was started reaching out to people, started becoming a little bit more active, but I didn't know a sustainable process around that. I didn't know a strategy that would work more long term. Like I knew more of the I understood more of the put out content and create visibility, and that takes quite a bit of time. And because I didn't have, that's more branding sort of stuff that doesn't give you a short-term payoff. That's more of a long-term payoff. But I didn't know a lead generation system. I didn't understand how it worked because I had some sales jobs, but I didn't understand the systems behind it. I didn't understand how sales worked, and I didn't know how to implement that in my business. But one of the things similar to you that helped me out was getting a contract with another coach who was already an entrepreneur, who had built multiple businesses. And to me, like when I got that opportunity, it was intuitively, I knew the area that I'm struggling with is business. And I was even thinking about it wasn't even just a coaching. Like the reason why I took like such a low I took a pay cut in terms of like how much I was willing to coach per session was one of the biggest things I even communicated that to him. Like, I'm actually looking forward to learning how you run your business more than anything else, how you're learning. That's obviously I'm getting a lot of practice in coaching. I'll be exposed to all these amazing clients, but I want to know what you're doing differently. And like, I wanted him more of as a mentor. I didn't get all of that, but at least I was like an observer of what he was doing. And I learned a lot from his stuff. And when I actually saw somebody in action, it helped me see, like, no, I'm not building a business. I'm just hoping that this will get built just because I'm putting a little bit of content out there. It requires a very different set of efforts. And most people, they just see the external part of it. They don't actually see internally what's happening in a company. And much of what's happening is there's a lot of effort towards client acquisition. And without that, a lot of this stuff doesn't work. So one, it gave me practice pretty much at somebody else's and somebody else's organization. It helped me grow, and I did coaching, but it also helped me understand how these people are running it. And it also, the process of coaching helped me become more confident in myself, which was very interesting. Not just being coached, but coaching others helped me become much more confident in what I was doing. That gave me the confidence to start reaching out. So while I was doing that, I was still promoting myself slowly. So whether that's at your job or at a contract, and I mean, when I transitioned out of one of my major contracts, I was okay to do that because I had built some skill sets in the background while I was working in that contract.
You make me think of something, that one of the reasons that I didn't make progress fast enough is partly because it was so hard. And the reason it was so hard was it was multi-factor. It wasn't just one thing that was in the way. It was like, how they say, like, if you have a boat attached to the dock, use lots of ropes. And if you cut a couple of ropes, the boat is still attached. It's not going to sail unless you cut all the ropes. And so, like, I had a whole bunch, I was like working on cutting one rope, thinking it was the only rope. Like, okay, so I need to build a website. But there's still 20 other ropes. And the biggest ropes were emotional and lack of knowledge of business. And so even if I was able to successfully do something, it didn't cover the other problem. Like, so for example, like, I didn't know anything about what I wanted. I didn't know anything about what kind of business I wanted to create. I didn't know anything about the types of clients I wanted to coach. I didn't also have confidence as a coach. I didn't have confidence that somebody would sign up with me. I didn't have confidence in my process to sell them a package. I didn't understand that selling can be a positive thing. There's so many different ropes on my boat. And I was maybe working on one of them without realizing they're all important. And so like, you can build a website, but like, if you don't know who you want to coach, that website's probably not going to be very useful. You can create a sales page, or you can even improve your sales process. But if you don't know how to find clients, that's not going to be very useful. So you can put a ton of effort into the thing that looks like the one, but like, there's so many pieces of this. You can take a higher level view and think about, what are all the pieces of this that are going to matter in the way that I want a business to be?
Yeah.
And then which ones do I need to work on first? And knowing that just because I get that one somewhere doesn't mean it's going to automatically make the rest work. It's like a car. Like, oh, I know I need a tire. Okay, but don't you need a steering wheel? Oh, okay, now I got a steering wheel, but don't you need a brake? And don't you need a door? Like, you have to know how to build like a little bit of a car. Like, you can build a crappy car with just the right parts, and that's a great start, but you still need some basic minimum things to reach.
I'm going to make it worse, because what a car looks like.
I know.
Most coaches don't know what a business looks like.
That's true.
So we actually had a session, we did our 90-day challenge session. I knew what questions to ask because I've been on this journey, and so a couple of our new members what I wanted to know is, like, where are their clients going to come from? And he's like, well, yeah, I'm excited. I'm doing this. I'm like, tell me how are you doing this? Like, what's your strategy for creating clients? And it was the same exact thing I was thinking about 7 years ago. It hasn't changed. Oh, I'm creating my website. I'm going to put content. Help me build the connection.
I'm going to make a business card.
I'm going to make a business. So he's telling, I'm like, help me build the bridge between you putting out content to you having clients. Like, what is what are you trying to do in there? And he's like, and I knew what he's thinking. So he didn't, like, I paused for a while. He didn't know because he didn't have like clarity around it. I'm like,
it's hope.
Are you hoping? And I had to say, are you hoping that because you're putting content, somebody's going to reach out to you and tell you to do the strategy session? Like, I didn't think of it that way, but that's a good hope.
That's exactly what they're thinking. Yeah. But that's an easy thing to think, because you don't understand the other pieces. Like, when you don't see half the equation, if I don't see the car, I don't know there's an engine. If I don't understand how a car works, I don't know there's an engine inside.
Yeah. So coaches don't know what actually business looks like. That's why I keep going back to business. And business have some essential components that need to be in place. So, for example, especially when you're starting out as a coach, prospecting will become the most important thing. And even within prospecting, you need to understand who, like you said, who are you reaching out to? Where are you going to focus your efforts at? Who are you going to reach out to? How are you going to, what is going to be the medium you're going to use? What's going to be your effort? How are you going to track that? Who's going to keep you accountable with that? This is where you need a few components in there, because you don't know what the car looks like, aka business looks like. You need somebody who's able to see that. You need other people who are either on the journey of building the car, or people who have built the car, and people who've built multiple cars. Whatever that looks like with that analogy, you need to be part of a community, a mentorship program, a coach, somebody that's going to help direct you as you're building the stuff. So all the stuff that we're talking about, like putting out content, is not a negative thing. That's a positive thing. That helps you build your confidence in sharing your message. Building a website is a positive thing. It's just that which ones are going to give you the best ROI. And at the beginning stages, you need to be prospecting. You need to be reaching out to people, and you need to be booking calls for you to do that. Or you need to make it. You need to make a mixed decision. Is that okay? No, maybe I need to find a job or a contract that I'm going to be in while I'm building that thing. And that requires you to kind of look at the more long term. Like, what is going to be a strategy as you move forward? Because if you go into the prospecting and you don't understand how sales works, and you need to build your sales process, and you need to get better at the conversion, you need to understand who you're going to reach out. That's going to take a little bit of time to build. While that's happening, let's say 6 months, 1 year, a year and a half, are you going to run out of financial and emotional bandwidth in that time?
Yeah, this is actually really important. Content isn't a bad thing, and it might be exactly the right thing depending what stage of business you're in. If you're at the early stages, that might actually hurt you because of the emotional bandwidth and time you're taking up to do that. That's if it's not aligned with getting you into the coaching conversations and the prospect. If it's not directly connected to prospecting at the beginning of your business, you need to focus to get prospecting done, which honestly just could mean having conversations with people. Yeah. Right.
And this, I mean, it can just be so. Like I was sharing when I was doing Uber, I was having a lot of conversation. It was just they didn't
know prospecting, but you were not. You were So one thing about the Uber method, I actually really like that method for two reasons. And I'm glad you brought it up because I never thought about it this way until now. Which is, if you are in conversations with people frequently, you can have those prospecting conversations and be paid to do it in an Uber. But you can actually learn pretty quickly the kinds of people you do like talking to and you don't like talking to. And you're like, if you're like, oh, I like talking to everybody, you need to think more carefully about that question, right? There's going to be some clients that are going to be right for you and some clients that are not going to be right for you. If you want to coach everybody, you're probably going to coach nobody, right?
I'm a pretty open person. I don't like talking to everybody.
Right. Yeah. So like but the thing that I like about the Uber method, which I'm not recommending, I'm just saying the thing I like about it is, you're getting into a lot of conversations early in your coaching career, and you're seeing different aspects of different people, and it's a wide cross section. So what you're able to do is you're casting a really wide net so that you can learn who are the people that are better for you to be talking to and coaching to, that you would enjoy and they would get a lot out of. And then the thing you're missing though is like, hey, at the end of the conversation, hey, did you like this conversation? Would you like to continue? Here's how you continue with me. You sign up right here. It's $50 million for your next session or whatever. Yeah. But being able to make that transition to the sale and conversion part is really important, right?
So I've learned two things, and it just hit me when I was reading The Prosperous Coach, and when Rich Liebman, I think it was Rich Liebman, it wasn't Steve Schaller, one of them, who said, never get into a coaching conversation without asking permission. And I was doing that all the time. I was doing that. I was coaching everybody, which was, I wouldn't do that now. Like you even know when I was when we were at the house, I was like, when Rob was sharing something, I was like, this is really getting me to go into coaching mode. I'm not going to.
Yeah, totally.
And I sent Rob the link. I'm like, you want to do a session? Not just because I want him to be part of my program. Like, we need to be in that space for us to do this. So like what I would tweak there, if I were to go back, let's say, like, I would know what to tell my old self. Exactly. I'm like, you're doing a lot of stuff that you can leverage what you're doing. So let's say Uber, I would have I will share a couple of things that would be more around asking a couple of questions, giving him some perspective, and be like, hey, I'd love to do a 1 hour session with you. Would you be open to that?
Now we're talking. Yeah.
Now it's becoming a coaching thing. Is like, can you just go here and just fill out this form, or can you share your phone number with me and we can book a call afterwards, and I can help you through with that thing. That would make it like I would have, let's say I had 100 conversations in a week. Out of that, I booked 10 people in a conversation. Out of that, I would very likely have 1 or 2 clients out of that. But I didn't do that because I didn't know to do that.
But you also have to know how to make them into clients too. Like, so I wasn't saying sell them in the car. I was just sort of using it as an example to say, like, you're having tons of conversations, which is really where you want to be at, because you want to gather the data on who's the right people for you. Right?
Yeah, definitely. I agree. It gives you a lot of perspective and insight as to who are the people that you want to connect with. But I'm looking at it from a more business side. Like, if I were to go back, I would just that one tweak will help me leverage my time that I was doing. But if you don't know that, you're not going to do that. You're just going to do random things, and it's not going to give you the payoff.
And most of them are going to be behind a computer instead of in front of people talking to them.
Yeah, and it's what I've learned is actually much easier and much faster to connect with people in person than it is. I would have done a lot more in-person things, like I would have created meetups or gatherings and stuff, but I didn't know that was better. And even if I did, I didn't have the support to like, how would I do that? How would I structure that?
And then you got to deal with emotional challenges of like, what if you don't feel like really comfortable in a group, or what if you don't feel comfortable networking or prospecting? It's like, well, you have to start getting okay with those things.
Yeah, and the reason we're sharing this, not to make you scared of the journey. We're just being candid with that. It is a lot of work, but for me at least, I don't know where the turnaround for you, but for me there were 2 turnaround. The biggest turnaround was actually being part of, like, I had to decide at some point that it's not like realize that being in my own corner was not working. I didn't know enough about the industry. I didn't know what other coaches were doing. And so when Jeff put out that message a few years back, I was like, okay, well, I'm trying all this stuff. It's like giving me half-assed results. This won't hurt. And I started getting around other coaches who were trying different things. That helped me. So, you know what, going back to the car analogy, it helped me create a better picture of the car. I had the picture of a quarter of a car, but the rest of it was invisible to my mind. It helped me create a picture of what I'm trying to create. And it started with us talking about just like, what are you doing in your coaching? Like, what's working for you? What's not working? Because I didn't even have enough confidence to try some of the things that I was trying. And then slowly, as we got more courageous, we started talking about the business. So what are you doing to get clients? Oh, well, I'm reaching out to people here and there. And I was doing webinars. Like, I didn't know, like I was kind of secretly doing webinars. There were a few people showing up, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm trying this thing. Oh, that's incredible. I've never tried that. What do you do? And then I'm like, maybe that's working. So I started doing more of that, but I would have given up on that in a month if I didn't talk to somebody. So it started building up a picture, even though most of us at the time when we started out, none of us had a proper business. Now, like, at least Coaching Mastery community is in a place where some of us are building really profitable businesses. We're trying different things. So it's bringing up more data. And that's why I think it's essential for coaches to be around the community, a set of supporters, mentors that will help you kind of move forward slowly, help you build a picture, and help deal with so many variables that we've kind of laid out here that it doesn't look like it's a lot, but there's a lot in there. There
is a lot in there, just as we've been talking about. And one thing I love about CMC is when you join CMC, it's like you're committing to staying in the game. It's like, and all of a sudden you have a group of people around you who you can ping and you can ask for multiple people's feedback. You can come to the mastermind. You can come to the client challenge on Mondays, where we focus on getting you your next 5 figures. It's like, we want you to succeed. And just like, because we know we've been through the journey, it's a hard one, especially if you're alone. And it's also very complex. Like, there's a lot of different pieces of it for different people, and it's different for everybody. And some people, their path is going to be get a job coaching. And for some people, their path is going to be get a part-time job coaching. Some people, it's going to be build your business. Some people, it's going to be both. Some people, it's going to be completely different, right? Some people, it's going to be build a community. It depends on you. And I don't want people to think there's only one type of car out there, right?
Yeah. And
if you don't take the time to think about your car more consciously, you might not know what you're building. And then that makes it really hard to actually build it.
Yeah, and one of the things I've learned, you can, like, there's so many creative ways you can build your business. You're not gonna run out of ways to prospect. You're not gonna run out of ways to structure business, whether starting with group coaching or one-on-one coaching or doing trainings, courses. However you do it, and the important thing is that, are you getting feedback? And most of the time, like, I was, so you know where I was getting my feedback initially? Friends and family, like the worst place to get feedback from.
I know.
I don't know how to
God.
explain the thing that I don't know how to explain. And then they're telling me, it's like, maybe you should try this thing.
I know.
Try that thing. Maybe you should do that. Like, that's not helpful. It's like,
or maybe you think it is helpful and you go try it and you're like, oh, that's a way, that was a dead. Like, they don't have, they're not at all part of it's like going to, like, I'm trying to build a car and you go to somebody who is like a lemonade stand vendor and be like, who's like, you should try this. And you're like, okay, thanks. And you go do that thing.
it was so discouraging in so many ways, because they were trying to help, but they were more hopeless than I was. So it was like, I think
in this area. Yeah.
So the people who were more restrained, they were a little bit more conscious. So I still remember, like, my sister-in-law and her husband, like, we were staying with them for 2 years. Like, I would go into the room, like, they were gracious enough to give us 2 rooms. So I had my office in there too. I would, like, have these conversations like, yes, I'm going to get this. I think I'm going to get this corporate contract. I went and talked to these people, and I think I talked to 2 people today. That was the time where I was actually trying things that were moving the business forward. And then I would come back, be like, the next time, be like, yeah, it didn't work out. And he just looked at me. He was angry. He's like, you do this, it's making me nervous. It's like, this is hard for me to hear.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. You know, you remind me, like, so I'll add a little to my story. After I moved in with my wife, we spent a year there, and she had a great job, so she was able to sustain us while I made basically no money. I think I made like $2,000 that first year, maybe less. I don't remember. Somebody signed up for 2 halves of a 12-month program, and after 6 months they left, so they didn't pay the rest. But anyways, the next year we did some traveling, and I started getting a little more confidence as a coach. Coaching, I did some workshops, I did some more coaching, and then we basically ran out of money, for lack of a better word. And we moved in with Kate's parents as well, for a lot of reasons, but ultimately we were staying there. We stayed there with them for multiple years. And I remember when I got my contract coaching job, and her dad was really, really supportive of that, was really excited for me. And then I got my first, I want to say $10,000 client, I think it was. And he was so happy for me. He cried for me. And I was just so touched by that. And living in that situation was really, really challenging. And we lived there for multiple years. We actually struggled to get our own place because we didn't have any income coming in. So it was a really challenging time for sure. Over those years, I think it was actually 3 years. But like, the people I was talking, like, I didn't have a community, and the people I was talking to were just random people in the community. And it was like, I wasn't actively seeking out my network of informed people. I wasn't actively seeking out the right kind of folks to be part of a community with.
Yeah. And that's it. That's what it comes down to. And our vision for CMC really, like, it came out of our own struggles. Like, and I don't just say this, that it gave me a frame of reference. It gave me confidence. And like, we're talking about emotional bandwidth here. Like, I love that you brought that up. Like, initially, most of the people that will come into CMC, they will get the emotional resiliency and confidence needed to even continue and stay in the game. And then our hope is, what we're trying to do is help clarify that car that we're talking about, help clarify the picture of what they're building and what it takes to build it, so they can consistently, over the long term, build it. Whether we do that through the 5-figure 9-day challenge, whether we do that with connecting you with a coach who's going to guide you through the process, not just on the course, but help you deal with all the challenges that you're going to be dealing with as you're starting, or in our Mastery Mind sessions, where we're actually discussing business and coaching. And those are the things that I never got around to. Like, I would have had to pay $20,000 to be part of Brennan's or somebody else's mastermind for me to even get a perspective. So like, it was interesting. So I was part of I just signed up for another thing just a few months ago, and it's a program on business. And this is what I don't like. There are a lot of new coaches that signed up for it. It wasn't that high for me. I just put it, I was more interested in the event itself. because I wanted to connect with Ajit Nawalka and all these guys. But the way almost every influencer in the coaching world develops their program is they get a bunch of people signed up, and they create these big groups, and they give them a bunch of things to work through, some helpful, some not, but there is no direct support. Like, there are 150 people on the call. There will be 3 people who will be able to ask questions. Some people will gain something out of it, but for the most part, nobody will have direct support. And they can't talk to call Ajit and talk to them. They can't talk. They can talk to each other, but everybody's confused. And then I get these messages, and I'm still thinking about how to respond to this. That one of the coaches sends me a message like, we've been part of this thing for 3 months. We put it in that. For them, it's much more than it is for me, because I make much more, and for me, it's a small investment compared to what they're putting in. And I feel it. They're like, we're not really getting what we're hoping to gain. And we thought we were going to get our business, this and that. And what they don't realize is that the timeline and how long it takes, how much support and connection and how much feedback it takes for you to start building this stuff. And that's why, like, in CMC, we've kind of stayed away from that stuff. What we want to create is more closed, small groups where we can actually help you kind of answer your questions collectively. There's no one expert sitting there. We're trying different things and give you feedback on what you're trying, and you will give other coaches feedback in the process. And that will help you build more of a picture of what you're creating than being part of some big program that is promising this model of, oh, you're going to build a business. And a lot of, and I'm not saying this to put down those programs, because there's value in it. But most of the value, so for me, it's valuable because I want to understand what they're doing and how are they growing and how do they think about their business. But initially, that's not valuable for me. Because initially, what I want to know is, how do I create cash flow in the business? How can I sustain this to support my family to actually get to a point where I can think about the strategy and other things?
I think what you're getting at is actually really important, which is when you're buying a program, you got to think about, is this going to, is this meeting me with where I'm at right now? Because I spent years buying so many programs. Oh my God, I can't even tell you how much.
I did too. Most coaches do.
Yeah, part of like, it seems like a rite of passage that coaches have to spend money on programs that aren't the right programs for them, just so they move one step forward or maybe like realize something. But I feel like there's a mismatch between what we think we're going to get and what we actually get, or how we think it's going to help us. And I will take responsibility. One of the big mismatches is me not knowing what I want, or me not knowing what the car looks like, right? And so I think there's a silver bullet solution, when in reality, the solution is work. And I get to a certain point in the program and I'm like, oh, this is the hard part. So I'm going to stop right there. Not consciously, but like, this is too hard for me to do. And part of it is lack of clarity. And part of it is lack of perseverance. And part of it is like, oh, this isn't the silver bullet that I thought it was. But there's no silver bullet. Like, you have to like think about yourself personally, and you're different from a lot of other people. So there may be a program out there that you want to get. Is that program going to help you? Because are you going to be committed to it? Is it designed for the specific stage that you're at right now? Like this program that Faisal's a part of, at his stage in business, it might be the right program, but it might not be the right program for a beginning coach who's going to go through the program and like get completely lost, right? Because you want different things out of it. Your business is in a different place. You need different accessories for your car at this stage. You got to be thoughtful about those things, because otherwise you can waste a lot of money and time and then be discouraged a lot that, I failed at this program, and it slows you down. So the thing about CMC I like is it's not actually a program, it's a community. It's like a group of people who are committed to professional development on an ongoing, sustained basis. We do have our 90-day challenge. Every quarter we run through the 90-day challenge, but it's an ongoing commitment to be clienting, to be prospecting, right? And we have our coaching chain, which is an ongoing commitment to developing your coaching skill and getting the feedback that you need. Like, so there's a lot of pieces of CMC that are about ongoing commitment, which is really the thing that's going to sustain you as a coach, not some fancy silver bullet program that's actually not the right program for you. So
yeah, and that's, I love that you framed it that way. And there are a lot of programs out there, and for even right now, like it's very interesting because I got like 10 different courses and I went through many of them and I tried to implement some of them. So even when you implement a marketing model or a sales model, you will try it for a bit and you're going to run into a block and you want your questions answered. Where do you go? Because a lot of these programs are scaled to a level where it's hard to get support until you get to a mastermind level, one-on-one. And this is like, that's why that's why when people get to a certain level in their business, they're part of multiple masterminds, because even at the growth and scale stages, they need to talk to other entrepreneurs who give them feedback about what are they trying in the world. Tony Robbins talks about this a lot. It's like, you need to be around other people who are strategically doing stuff. You need to be talking with other business owners, or in the world that we're in, you're going to go bankrupt. We live in a world where there's information is constantly changing. Tech is constantly changing. And now Brendan was talking about there's AI coming into the picture of coaching. How are you going to deal with that? Unless you have a pulse on what people are trying, what is working, what is not working, unless you're getting feedback for your process, you're like jumping into this wild that you don't know what to do with. And that's where I was. I feel the pain of that, because going from like Daniel sharing $2,000 to making over $200,000, for me, this is still surreal, because I'm like, all I wanted was like a business, like it would give, if I made $50,000, I would have been the happiest coach on earth, because that would give me some time with my family, and I would do something that mattered to me. But it has gone way beyond that, and I'm thinking that my goal is $1 million next year. So, and it's not like, oh, I want more and more. It's like, oh my God, what is possible, and what can I help? How can I help others with that same thing too? Because and that's the other side of it. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's hard. Yes, there are a lot of variables, but the potential for a business like this can be incredibly immense if your heart is in it and you're willing to commit and move forward.
Yeah.
And it's not for everybody, because and like, even when you look at it statistically, what 10-20% of the coaches make most of the money. And how do they make it? Well, it requires another level of thinking. It requires another level of commitment, supported consistency that most other coaches won't. And that's where your sincerity comes in. You need to invest in yourself in a program that will consistently support you to develop yourself, whatever that looks like. If that's CMC, we welcome you here. If that's another program, I want you to think hard about that. Is it just going to be another model that you're going to try and you're not going to get feedback on it? You need live feedback. You don't need information overload in the beginning stages. There's a lot of information out there. You need people to give you feedback on what you're trying. You need to understand what other people are trying, and you need to consistently go forward and have accountability and support as you're building this. And that's what we're talking about. Do you have that? If you don't have that, there are too many variables for you. You're going to struggle just like we struggled. That's the whole reason why CMC was built, and the reason why we're moving it forward, that this is going to be the middle ground. When you, from the time where you decide and you get your certification to the time you build the business, where is your supposed support structure? Who are the people who are going to give you consistent feedback?
Which is arguably the hardest time in business, going from 0 to 1, as Peter Thiel would say. It's really hard to go from 0 to 1 in business, right? And as a coach, it's even harder because it's very relational. It's your identity is wrapped up in it. You take it personally. So you don't have to, but like, that's typically what happens. And so that really is one of the hardest stages in business for a coach, is that first stage.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, I want to give you a reference. So I had this week, I'm literally going to look at my calendar. I had two coffee conversations, and I had 2 sales calls last week. I had 2 sales calls this week. Out of all the 4 sales calls, I don't know what's going on with any of them. Most of them haven't translated. There's one potentially that's going to sign up. I still don't know. Now, in the past, I was doing the same things. I was booking calls, at least in the place where I kind of got out of my head and I started booking calls. I would still book calls, but my thinking was so different. My emotions around it were so different. Now I was like, okay, I serve the person. I'll keep in touch. I'll keep sending value. But now it's like that. I'm going to just support more people, and I'm going to book more calls, and I can afford that. And I can do this now. But in the past, it was like I would do a sales call and I would sit there for a week trying to deal with the emotions of that call didn't go according to plan. It wasn't the call that was the problem. It was that I didn't know what was working, what was not. Me not signing up a client after 3 calls is not a problem. Me not doing calls is a problem. And what I would do is I would stop doing those calls.
I love this, Faisal. So good. And I think we need to wrap up soon, because I actually have a client call coming up. It's actually, this is I want to say 96th session with this client. So we're almost at 100. This is the second client that we'll get to 100 this year. And it's really great. Like one of the thing, I'll just tell you, the thing that turned it around for me, I think, was two things. One was a client that renewed the first time. I was like, oh, you want to pay me again? Okay, that's a good sign. And the second thing that really did it for me, which did it first actually, is getting the contract job as a coach. Working for somebody else part-time was like one of the best moves I could make for myself. Because like it's a boost of confidence. It's actually a necessity to level up. It's like take some of the marketing pressure off so I can get some money. It made a huge difference. So those are the two things, you know.
Yeah. And that's
contract
actually,
coaching and renewal.
And that's part of the reason why part of the branch of CMC, it's in the infancy, but we've built a couple of contracts, and we're actually building contracts with companies where we're hiring. We've hired 3 of our coaches to do coaching at this point for us. That while you're building your business, you need to develop your confidence and competency, and that's going to be important for you to build it. So I love that, and I want to share is that if you're sincere about your path, definitely get the support and focus on, in the beginning stages, focus on client acquisition. That means talking and asking for referrals from your friends, family, reaching out to your network, whatever it takes. You need to be in conversations with
Get
people.
in conversation.
Get in conversation. If there's nothing wrong with you doing content, but that's not going to give you the clients long term. Unless you have a large following, it's not going to give you clients. And even then, you still have to be a little bit more proactive.
Yeah, unless you're really strategic about it. If you become really strategic and intentional and clear about how that's going to get you clients, then that could work. But get in conversation, develop your skills, develop your confidence, learn how to close people, so that when you get the clients from the content, if that's strategically set up right, then you know what to do with it.
Yeah, definitely. And we're actually doing like if you're listening in the Facebook group, you're already part of our community, definitely attend. And if you're not in a position to sign up for CMC, at least attend our Thursday sessions, because you're going to get a lot out of that. We air those live. We're doing another free session on 2nd of January, Vision Building. Daniel and I are hosting that as well. That's going to help you with your long-term thinking around this. What are you really building? What is your long-term view of what you're creating? And does that align with you creating a full-time business?
How do they register for that session? Can you share?
I'll put the link below. I think it's ready to go. I'm pretty sure it's ready to go. I'll put the link below in the chat here. I don't know the address exactly, but I'll put it below. We have
also, if you can't find that link for whatever reason, if you're hearing this on Audible and you don't have time, you can always go to coachingmasterycommunity.com, sign up for our list, and then you can get our updates on that too. That's another way to find it.
And so if you're in the Facebook group, you would have seen an event created, but if you're listening to it afterwards, go to coachingmasterycommunity.com, and I'll have the link for our Facebook group there. Definitely join that, because that's where we put a lot of our updates there. You'll be supported regardless. We don't want you to think that, oh, okay, these guys are selling another program. No, just join the Facebook group, see what we're trying to do, watch some of our, be part of the live participation in our sessions. You will see how this is going to help you. We want you to see if this is going to serve you or not before you jump in. And if you join us, we're excited to have you, and we're excited to see you on January 2nd. I'll put the link below. And Daniel, thank you for joining me for this long conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Faisal. And thank you also, I want to thank you personally, Faisal, because your example of commitment and of, you building your business has been inspiring to me, but also to our members. And if you hadn't been willing to be that, committed person, we wouldn't be able to serve the people we're serving today. So I just really appreciate you for everything you brought to this conversation, but also everything you bring to Coaching Mastery community. Such a pleasure to work with you.
And you too, you've inspired me along the way. And I always say that you actually gave me the first experience of an advanced coach. So thank you for that. We've talked about that in the last conversation that we did. So definitely listen to that one with Daniel. But we'll continue this next week, same time, 10:30. I think it's going to be Jeff and Daniel, right?
I'm not sure. Maybe Jeff and Sherry. We'll have to double check. I'm pretty sure it's at least two
of
the four.
Will be two of us on that call at 10:30, airing live. We're gonna show up whether it's me or Daniel or somebody else. I won't be there, but I think Jeff and Sherry will be.
2 out of the 3 out of the 4 of us. Okay, got it.
Take care, Daniel. Hope you have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Take care, you all.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey Podcast.